We are back on MorningLine talking education, the issue with whether it's virtual or in classroom, and it's something that continues to be discussed and debated. With us is Beth Brown. She's from the Tennessee Education Association. So Beth, yeah, our last caller, Angela, I think, made some interesting points, just wondering about looking at solutions. And maybe first, if you want to address, she witnessed firsthand, her younger grandchild having some real troubles not learning virtually, and so the family actually moved someplace else. It seems to me, first on that point, Beth, that a lot of the complaints I seem to hear come from those parents with the younger children. And I think it may be more of a challenge for the youngsters to do all this social media and stuff than it is maybe for a high schooler or middle schooler. Is that your experience? And she seemed concerned about that, obviously.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about which age groups are more at risk when you are for the disruption to learning that we're experiencing because of COVID. Those earlier grades when you're getting such critical foundation skills, those are obviously a priority, and that's in so many district reopening plans, an attempt to bring back those early grades first. My understanding is that Metro Nashville did that when they tried to start phasing students in. They started with the earlier grades. So there's definitely recognition that the disruption to student learning caused by the pandemic and caused by remote learning are greater at the earlier grades. So I would not disagree with that at all.
Okay, and as far as her suggestion, has it been looked at, to your knowledge, in some of these districts, maybe trying to, stagger the classes in such a way, as she was suggesting? And I don't know how realistic that is, but maybe that's a way to reduce the number of kids there at one time and make it safer for everyone involved?
So I couldn't speak definitively to what the conversations have been in Metro Nashville Public Schools, but as a teacher, just during the break, one of the things, or a couple of things I was thinking about in her idea about having some grades come in the morning and some in the afternoon, that's going to impact student transportation, which is going to essentially double the cost when districts are already strapped for resources. You also have to think about the cleaning protocols that have to be in place when you are shifting between different groups. You've got to have time for janitorial staff to come in and properly sanitize the areas. And the last thing that I would point out has to do with staffing and what they're certified to teach and what they're assigned to teach. So just that half day or hybrid split, there are some logistical challenges with that. I don't know what the conversations have been again in Metro Nashville, but just on the fly, those are some things that immediately come to mind. So I don't know that it's a fair statement to say that solutions haven't been considered. I just think that educators are much more familiar with the day-to-day workings of our schools, and we may be aware of things that the general public may not be aware of.
Okay. And in the last segment, Beth, you were talking about how some of these school districts had to have so many kids in the gymnasium because so many were out on quarantine or had gotten sick. I'm just wondering, too, just in terms of staffing, substitutes, first of all, do you know teachers that for whatever reason, maybe they were ready for a career change, or maybe that have just basically said, I'm done with this, I quit? Has there been a lot of that? And I could understand if some teachers say, look, I'm tired of getting criticized left and right, and I'm not going to put my life at risk and go do this, and just quit. Has that happened?
It is happening. We're also seeing educators who are eligible to retire deciding to go ahead and retire, even though they might have wanted to spend a few more years in the career. And this is certainly a concern, as we already face an educator shortage. And as we think about the needs of our students coming out of the pandemic and overcoming the disruptions to their learning, we need an experienced educator workforce. So that is definitely a top concern.
Yeah, and I'm wondering when that happens too, with the staffing and how it plays out. How do you go about filling that with substitutes? Is there a good list of substitutes ready to fill in? Do other staffers at a school, I know of a private school, Beth, where the teachers are out and one of the women who works the front desk has to go and more or less just supervise as opposed to teach some of these classes on a daily basis because people are out. It's come to that point. I understand people pushing in class, but at some point you're going to be out of luck if there just aren't any teachers.
Absolutely. We typically have a shortage of substitute teachers that's only been exacerbated by the pandemic, where people are not wanting to put themselves at risk by coming to provide in-person instruction or supervision. The other thing we have to think about is in a lot of districts, our substitute workforce is made up of retired educators or people who have retired from other positions. And so they fall into an age category where they are much more at risk if they contract COVID-19.
Do you know what a typical substitute teacher makes for a day on the job? What is a typical pay rate for a sub?
That varies by district based on daily rate of pay and what the school board has adopted. I can tell you that in a lot of districts across the state, including mine, I'm a rural educator, the pay was less than, when I took leave from my classroom, their daily take-home pay was about $60 a day.
$60 a day, maybe a little bit higher in some of the larger cities like Nashville or Memphis or something. But think about that, $60 a day. And as a substitute teacher, it's not an easy job, too. You know how kids sometimes are with subs. You know, they don't give them the same respect oftentimes that they deserve that the teachers get. So if those lists are shrinking, we certainly hope this next year, Beth, because of the vaccine, it eventually gets to 1B, the teachers get vaccinated. Is that really what everyone's looking to moving forward? I know you're going to deal with what the legislature does when they come back in February and some of these other questions that the governor's asking. But the bottom line is, I mean, is everyone just putting all their hopes into the fact that maybe we'll have this vaccine out, teachers will be protected, and that maybe before the end of the year we can all go back, or certainly plan for next year when it kicks in, to all be back in the classrooms as is?
I think that is the hope of every educator in the state of Tennessee, is that we are able to safely return to in-person class as soon as possible. But the key word there is safely.
Yeah, and so, but realistically then, if they can do it safely, I mean, all schools getting back to the way it was a couple of years ago may not be until next fall.
That I think that's a correct statement.
Yeah, anyone who thinks it's going to get back to normal this last leading up to summer, you're living in a dream world. There'll be pockets of it, but it's not going to be across the board, and there'll be continue to be debate and battle over all of this. So interesting. Beth, listen, thanks for coming on. You teachers do a great job. It's a tough gig. Keep fighting the fight, and thank goodness we have people out there who are still willing to educate our children.
Thank you, Nick.
All right.
Have a great day.
Yeah, take care of yourself. It's good talking to you. I'll tell you, she does a great job, and it's a tough gig, and a lot of people down on how things are playing out. I think a lot of the parents certainly are legit with their concerns, like this last woman that called in, Angela, concerned about her grandson. I understand that. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a parent with a small child. My son right now is going to the University of Tennessee. He's there at campus, has one class on campus, but the rest is still virtual. He lives in an apartment with friends, and I'm fine with that. I'm disappointed because it's not as good as it is when you're on campus and surrounded by all the culture that comes with a major university like that, but I understand it. And if my son was struggling in the elementary level, I would be very concerned and try to take steps, be it tutoring, maybe moving like they did or whatever, to make sure that he gets up to speed. But my solution would not be, well, he's struggling, to heck with the health concerns, let's just send him back to school. And that's what I see some parents saying, well, yeah, my kid's going to be fine if he gets, let's just send him back, without thinking about the teachers. And that, in a word, is selfish. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will shift gears, since we have now moved on from Beth, and we're going to talk about a very major court hearing this morning on a case that we will be covering gavel to gavel here on the Plus. And the big question moving forward is, will it be possible to get a fair jury in this very, very high-profile trial? We'll be back with that in our final segment right after this.